The city buzzed with its usual chaos, horns blaring, crowds weaving through concrete canyons, and the sharp scent of street food mingling with exhaust. Amid the frenzy, Richard Caldwell, a millionaire tech mogul, strode toward his sleek black SUV, his tailored suit catching the late afternoon sun. His mind was a storm of boardroom battles and stock market swings, but beneath it all, a deeper ache gnawed at him. His daughter, Lily, hadn't walked in 5 years. A car accident had stolen her mobility at age 10, and no amount of money had brought it back. Specialists, surgeries, therapies, nothing worked. Richard's wealth could buy islands, but not hope. As he reached for the car door, a voice sliced through the noise. "Sir, I can make your daughter walk again." Richard froze. The words were absurd, impossible, yet they landed like a thunderbolt. He turned to see a man crouched against a crumbling brick wall, his clothes tattered, his face weathered by years of hardship. A beggar, Richard thought, dismissing him instantly. But those eyes, piercing, unyielding, held him in place. The man's gaze wasn't pleading. It was knowing. "Excuse me." Richard's tone was sharp, defensive. He was used to scams, sob stories, people clawing at his fortune. But this wasn't a pitch for cash. The beggar stood slowly, his movements deliberate, and repeated, "I can make your daughter walk again. Not with medicine. Not with machines. With something you've forgotten." Richard's instinct was to walk away, but curiosity, or desperation, rooted him. "You're wasting my time," he said, but his voice wavered. The beggar's name was Elias. He spoke softly, but his words carried weight. "I've seen your story, Mr. Caldwell. The news, the magazines, your daughter's accident. You've tried everything money can buy. But healing isn't always about wealth. It's about belief." Richard scoffed. Belief? He believed in data, results, tangible proof. Yet Elias's calm certainty unnerved him. "Meet me tomorrow," Elias said, scribbling an address on a scrap of paper. "Bring Lily. No doctors, no guards. Just you and her." Against every rational impulse, Richard took the paper. That night, he couldn't sleep. Lily's wheelchair sat in the corner of her room, a silent reminder of his failure. At 15, she was bright, kind, but her spark had dimmed. Richard had poured millions into research, flown her to clinics worldwide, yet her legs remained still. What could a beggar offer that Harvard-trained surgeons couldn't? Still, Elias's words echoed. "Something you've forgotten." By morning, Richard made a decision. He'd go, if only to prove the man a fraud. The address led to a rundown community center in the city's forgotten fringes. Graffiti scarred the walls, and the air smelled of damp concrete. Inside, Elias waited, surrounded by a small group of people, ordinary, weathered, yet oddly serene. Lily, skeptical but curious, gripped her wheelchair's armrests as Richard pushed her in. Elias knelt beside her, his voice gentle. "Lily, do you believe you can walk?" She hesitated, then shook her head. "I used to." "Not anymore." Elias smiled. "That's where we start." He explained his method, a blend of mindfulness, visualization, and community support, rooted in ancient practices he'd learned in his travels. No drugs, no surgery, just the power of the mind and collective encouragement. Richard rolled his eyes. Pseudoscience, he thought. But Lily's face softened, intrigued. Elias led her through a simple exercise, closing her eyes, picturing her legs moving, feeling the ground beneath her feet. The room hummed with quiet affirmations from the group. Richard watched, torn between skepticism and a flicker of hope. When Lily opened her eyes, she was crying. "I felt something," she whispered. Richard's heart lurched. Was it real, or just emotion? He didn't know, but for the first time in years, he saw light in his daughter's eyes. Weeks passed, and the community center became a second home. Richard, still wary, drove Lily there daily, watching as Elias guided her through visualization exercises. The group, janitors, retirees, former addicts, formed a circle of support, chanting affirmations, sharing stories of their own struggles. Richard bristled at their simplicity, their lack of credentials, but he couldn't deny Lily's progress. Her posture straightened, her laughter returned, and once, during a session, her foot twitched. A small movement, but to Richard, it was seismic. Elias taught Lily to reframe her pain. Your body remembers how to move, he said. Your mind just needs to trust it. He shared studies on neuroplasticity, how the brain can rewire itself with focused effort. Richard, a man of science, dug into the research. Articles from reputable journals confirmed it. Mindfulness and visualization could strengthen neural pathways, sometimes aiding recovery in paralysis cases. It wasn't magic, it was biology, amplified by community. Richard's skepticism began to crack, but doubt lingered. Was Elias exploiting their hope? Richard hired a private investigator to dig into the man's past. The report came back. Elias had been a doctor decades ago, struck off after advocating unorthodox treatments. He'd wandered the world, studying healing practices, then vanished into poverty. No criminal record, no scams, just a man who'd lost everything chasing a belief. Richard didn't know whether to trust him more or less. Lily, meanwhile, thrived. She spoke of feeling connected to her body, a sensation she'd lost years ago. One day, during a session, she stood, shaky, supported by Elias and another group member, but standing. Richard's throat tightened. He wanted to believe, but fear held him back. What if she fell? What if this hope crumbled? Elias sensed his turmoil. You're fighting yourself, Mr. Caldwell. Healing isn't just for Lily, it's for you too. Richard began joining the sessions, awkwardly at first. He visualized letting go of guilt, the guilt of not preventing the accident, of failing to fix Lily. The group's warmth enveloped him, stripping away his armor. He realized he'd been chasing cures to prove his worth, not just to help Lily. Elias's words from their first meeting rang true. Healing was about belief, not in miracles, but in possibility. One evening, as Richard shared a memory of Lily laughing in the garden, his voice cracked, not from pain, but from release. The group sat with him in silence, a quiet affirmation that he no longer carried the weight alone. In that stillness, he felt something shift, not the erasure of grief, but its transformation. For the first time in years, Richard wasn't running toward answers, he was walking with the questions, and that was enough. Months later, Lily took her first unassisted step. The room erupted in cheers. Richard wept openly, something he hadn't done since the accident. It wasn't a full recovery. Lily still needed her wheelchair most days, but the progress was undeniable. More than her legs, her spirit had transformed. She radiated joy, purpose. Richard, too, was changed. He funded the community center's renovation, ensuring Elias's work could continue. He even joined the group's chants, his voice blending with theirs. In time, Richard and Lily began volunteering together, mentoring families navigating similar hardships. Their bond, once strained by silence and sorrow, deepened through shared purpose. Every weekend, they returned to the community center, not out of obligation, but out of love. Lily's laughter echoed in the halls, a sound that once seemed impossible. And Richard, now a man reborn in hope, found healing not just in her steps, but in the steps they were taking together, forward, always forward. Elias never asked for money or fame. When Richard offered a fortune, he declined. Keep it for those who need it, he said. Richard learned Elias's true wealth, a life spent helping others reclaim hope. The millionaire and the beggar had become equals, bound by a shared journey. As Lily took another step, Richard understood. The greatest power wasn't in his bank account, but in the human spirit, resilient, collective, unstoppable. In the months that followed, Richard transformed his life. He sold off his excess, funded shelters, and walked the streets, not as a savior, but as a student of humanity. Every story he heard reminded him of Elias. And though the old man had vanished as quietly as he came, his presence lingered in every act of kindness Richard now witnessed. Elias hadn't just changed a millionaire, he had awakened a movement.